Let's check out the most popular cards in the Fallout Commander decks. Hey everyone, my name is DJ. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and these Fallout Commander decks look phenomenal. There's so many interesting and unique and stylish cards inside. So much so that Commander players are itching to get these singles in their Commander decks. We're going to take a look at the most anticipated, hyped cards from these Commander decks and find out which ones you need. Special thanks to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video, but let's talk about the most popular card from these Fallout decks. It's Nuca Vending Machine. Nuca Vending Machine is 3 mana for an artifact. 1 tap, create a food token. Whenever you sacrifice a food, create a tapped treasure token. I love that treasure generation, it's so good. But let's focus on the first part, making food. 3 mana up front and then another mana every turn to make a food is not something I'm super excited about. I feel like I want my food to be cheaper, but maybe I should be okay with that cost, because when I think about other colorless ways to make food, it's going to be Witch's Oven and the Underworld Cookbook, and those have me giving up real cards in order to get my food. So maybe this mana investment is okay, especially when I can get it back again because of the second ability. Whenever you sacrifice a food, create a tapped treasure token. So good. And also remember that this is not going to be the only source of food creation in this deck. This belongs in food and token synergy. So we're going to have food coming from all sorts of different sources and sacrificing them for lots of different reasons. And as we do that, we just create more value along the way. There are more food cards than ever. We've seen food come up and come up again. In fact, we've been to Eldraine twice, giving us a ton more food in recent years. Just to give you one example of the synergy possible, let's look at Academy Manufacture. Academy Manufacture is 3 mana for an artifact creature assembly worker. It's a 1/3. If you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. That means that when you tap Nuca Vending Machine to get a food, you also get a clue and a treasure. And then when you sacrifice any of these foods, you get a treasure, which then generates you a food and a clue. So the verdict on this card is that it belongs in food decks, obviously. I don't think you're going to want this card in just any old deck. I think you're going to have other food synergies to make sure that this all matches up beautifully. But it's a perfect inclusion for a really fun strategy. And the second most popular card from the Commander Fallout decks is Radstorm. Radstorm is 3 and a blue for an instant. It's got 2 words on it: Storm, Proliferate. Cool design and powerful keywords. Storm says that whenever you cast a spell, copy it for each spell cast before this turn. Proliferate is choose any number of permanents and/or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. Storm is a busted mechanic. I mean, usually you play a bunch of your own spells, and then the last spell you play is your Storm spell, and it copies for everything else you've done that turn, and you get this big payoff. I don't know if Proliferate, though, is that big payoff we're looking for. Proliferate is a little bit problematic because it doesn't just win on its own. You kind of need something going on. The things that I like to proliferate are loyalty counters on planeswalkers, big board states full of +1/+1 counters, and infect counters on my opponent. So in those situations, Radstorm can do some really cool stuff. In the average case scenario, if I cast this at instant speed on my opponent's turn after they've done some spells, maybe I'm getting 3 copies, 4 copies of this. And so now my opponents that have, a couple infect counters on them, it just starts ramping up. My planeswalkers, maybe they get big enough to ultimate out of nowhere. My, medium-sized army becomes huge. So I can see how Radstorm can take a board state, take a winning position, and really ramp it up. But it doesn't do very much if you don't already have that board state, you already have your opponents infected. So it's a little bit of a win more card. There are a couple Proliferate cards I like way better, and some of them are in this Fallout set, like Atomize. Atomize just says 2 black-green instant, destroy target non-land permanent, Proliferate. You need to kill stuff anyways in your commander deck, and so then if you happen to proliferate along the way, that's fantastic. So this is the thing that you need along with the synergy that you could quite possibly have. You're not all in on the proliferate with this card. Or something like Mutational Advantage. Mutational Advantage is 1 green-blue for an instant. Permanents you control with counters on them gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to those permanents this turn. Proliferate. See, that's fantastic too, because if I have a big board state, I'm not super interested in just making it even bigger with like 4 copies of Radstorm. Actually, I am interested in that, but still, it's not the thing I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about protecting my board, not getting interacted with or blown out in any way. And so a card like Mutational Advantage is something I'm really interested in. I think it's something that I need more so than Radstorm. Not from the Fallout Commander set, but recently the Lost Cavern of Ixalan Commander gave me Ripples of Potential, and that has been key in my Planeswalkers decks. Like, it's been so good to be able to sort of protect things while I proliferate and then kind of save my Planeswalkers to really take advantage of the next turn, like really good. So I actually think that those are going to be preferable to Radstorm, although winning over the top is pretty good too. The verdict is that I don't know if I'm super excited about running Radstorm, but if I am running it, I'm going to put it in Super Friends decks. I'm putting it in Infect decks. I'm putting it in, Counters Matters decks. The next card is a future staple if you're playing the right archetype. It's Idolized. Idolized is 1 and a white for enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks alone, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of non-land permanents you control. This is a 100% staple because think about all that glitters. All that glitters is 1 and a white for an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. And all that glitters is a staple of any of those like aura-based build up 1 creature strategies. And Idolize is just a kind of a better version of it. Granted, you can't be attacking with all sorts of other creatures, but that's not what the strategy goes for. They want to suit up 1 relevant creature and attack with it. And Idolize does that. It will count all of the artifacts, all the enchantments. It'll count all the other random creatures like that core spirit dancer you have lying around. All-time staple for cards like Light Pulse, Bruna, Calyx, Ural, just so many different auras matters commander. And that is a popular strategy. It's in the top 10 most played archetypes in Commander. So there's going to be a lot of people really excited about Idolize. Aura decks are popular, but so are equipment decks. And we have a solid new equipment in Pip-Boy 3000. Pip-Boy 3000 is a 1 mana artifact equipment with Equip 2. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, choose 1. Sort inventory, that's draw a card, then discard a card. Pick a perk, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, or check map, untap up to 2 target lands. At first I looked at all those abilities and thought, you know what, there's equipment that does it better. I can just plain old draw a card on, a Sword of Fire and Ice. But then I realized that Pip-Boy 3000 is better than I thought. I think that one of the big advantages is how quickly it gets on the battlefield and how quickly it gets equipped to a creature. Like, that's kind of the bottleneck for a lot of pieces of equipment. It's like hard to get them into use. And Pip-Boy 3000 is getting going really quickly. I also like that it triggers on attack, not to mention being awesome in Ishin decks. I like that I get the value just by attacking, even if I'm like suiciding my creature into a crowded board, because sometimes you just really need to untap those 2 lands or loot to something better. And so often I find my swords getting chumped whenever possible because they don't want those combat damage triggers. So Pip-Boy 3000 gives me tons of flexibility, it gets going quickly, and I think it's going to be really modal and flexible, and equipment decks need that flexibility a lot. So the verdict is I'm going to play this in equipment decks, but it has to be like a low curve aggressive equipment deck, because if we're trying to like cheat equipment into play or cheat it onto other creatures, I'm going to want more impactful equipment. But if I'm going to be paying all the costs myself, I want something cheap and I want to be able to quickly move it in between creatures and give me that small targeted incremental advantage all along the way. The next most popular card is Feral Ghoul. Feral Ghoul is 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie mutant. It's got menace, and whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Feral Ghoul. When Feral Ghoul dies, each opponent gets a number of rad counters equal to its power. This is an evasive zombie that keeps getting bigger and has 1 final damage dealer at the very end, which means that it's perfect in decks that want that inevitability and that damage. So it's going to be fantastic in a zombie deck. Zombie decks often have you sacrificing creatures, decayed zombies end up dying. So this is going to be fantastic, pressuring your opponents, dealing that last bit of damage, coming back from the graveyard, just perfect. It's also going to be amazing in aristocrat strategies. Like, in that way, you have a bunch of disposable creatures that you can sacrifice. The Ghoul gets bigger, attacks in a little bit, and whenever you need to, you sacrifice the Ghoul, radiating that damage out to all of your opponents. As your opponents get rad counters, they don't immediately take that damage. It's going to be a little bit of a slow burn, but if the game goes on long enough, they will eventually take all that damage. It's going to be especially dangerous if you're playing a commander like Teysa Karlov, allowing you to double up that death trigger. And then the final card I want to talk about today is Vats. VATS is 2 black for an instant. It has split second. Choose any number of target creatures with equal toughness, destroy the chosen creatures. This is a fantastic removal spell. The fact that it has split second is better than you think, because split second is an amazing mechanic. It means that it can't be reacted to. Once it's on the stack, like, players can't do anything else. And so that means it can't be counterspelled. Your opponent can't sacrifice creatures. They can't grow the power and toughness of it. It can't protect it with the Teferi's Protection or any of those other fancy spells. Like, it's gonna resolve. And that confidence is worth a couple extra mana. But of course, you're not just killing one creature all the time. Sometimes you're able to target like 2 creatures and take 2 of them out. And then every so often, your opponent's playing like an elf deck or sapperling deck, and they've gone super wide with 1/1 tokens or 2/2 knights or whatever, and you just mow down an entire army. Or they've gotten a little bit crazy with a mirror entity, activated it for a huge amount, and you just destroy their entire team. Vats is what I like to call, like, not exactly a low floor. It's just a very acceptable card, but it has the potential to create some of the most amazing, hilarious stories around. And those are the cards that are worth playing. So like, I think that Vats is like the most impressive card of all the ones that I've talked about right now, just because you can tell that story of, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Everything lined up perfectly and I was able to take out 3 commanders across 3 different boards. It was amazing. Of course, these are just popular cards. These are what the internet is the most hype about. Tell me what you think are the best cards from these Fallout Commander decks. Hey, I'm a Magic the Gathering ambassador, and this episode is brought to you by Wizards of the Coast. I want to remind you that there is cool stuff going on at your local game store all the time, including events to play these Commander decks. My favorite thing to do is just come together with the community and play fun new cards. So check out the link in the description to find out more about events at your local game store. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to Wizards of the Coast, and hope you all have a really great day. Bye-bye, everyone.